Final Fantasy V has been one of my favorite experiences in the franchise so far. It's the second game that I didn't know anything about going into, those being 3, 5, and 9, so I'm still excited to go back and play 9. It's really just 3, 2. It's everything 3 was, but better, more refined, and just less frustrating. For that reason, I actually really enjoyed it more than any of these other games. Spoiler alert, I really enjoyed Final Fantasy V. Now, I am going to talk about story elements, so if you're interested in playing this game, consider playing it before jumping into the video, because I do talk about things. But Final Fantasy V story is actually pretty solid. It's a little goofy. I mean, not even a little goofy. There's some points where it's just like, what the fuck? But it's a pretty goofy game to play, which is definitely a tone change. I brought up in Final Fantasy 2 that Final Fantasy 2 is very dark, and like the tone is constantly like people are dying. Like it starts with war and like a family being burned down. There's several villages that just get destroyed. It's pretty dark. I mean, this game takes a lot of tone up into being a little bit brighter of a story. They're constantly cracking jokes. There's one point, I don't remember exactly what the joke was, and I couldn't find it when I was looking through footage last night, but where Bartz, the main character, was like, he slept in late or something when you were getting ready, and Galuf, the old man, has to come and knock him on the head or something, and he's just like, wake up, you young whippersnapper. And it doesn't help that Galuf is always trying to make quips, and oh, I'm the old guy, so I'm making funny jokes like an old crazy guy. So the tone is very humorous, which I thought was an interesting tone change, and I didn't mind it too much. The reason that it did bother me a little bit is because it extends to like every aspect of the game. The primary antagonist is this guy named Exdeath, which is the dumbest fuck name. It's so stupid. But also, Exdeath like turns himself into a splinter at some point to hide in Kryl, the young child's finger. And that's like a big plot point. That's not even like a random thing. He just turns himself into a splinter, and then he like pops out and he's like, whoa, oh, now you guys know what my secret plan is, and I'm gonna take over the void. And then like he fucking like deletes half the world. So that was a little weird, and I thought it was just a little too goofy for me. But the rest of the story is pretty good, and I have a couple of like points that I really thought was exciting about it. Crystals are a huge element in this game, but they're done in such a different way. Like we always knew that crystals were directly impactful in like human lives, and that they like impact it. Like the water crystal vaguely like affects like water, or like the earth crystal probably makes like lands near it very fertile and bountiful on like harvest and things like that. But in this game, they literally like pull water out of the water stone, or they literally use the fire stone or crystal to power like a fire engine. And I thought that was interesting that there's like more tactile uses for these crystals. And then it also directly represents the fact that the whole story arc is based off of humans kind of overusing them and them breaking because we are overusing them. Like I think they were tempted by Exdeath like while he was captured, but ultimately it was humans' hubris that like started this whole chain of events, which is kind of interesting. Not every story needs to be that way, but I mean, this is the first out of 5 that's that way. So I thought that was kind of interesting because it's like Sid builds these engine things that you attach onto the crystals, and it hypes up their output. And that's what was causing them to shatter. Final Fantasy V also echoes kind of how I felt about 4, where you're constantly going to these major checkpoints and losing instantaneously. You go to the first crystal, it's already destroyed. Second, third crystal, they're destroyed. You go to the fourth crystal, and you're betrayed by your dad, I think, and he just fucking deletes the crystal too, even though he's being controlled by Exdeath. Yeah, you're kind of hopping from checkpoint to checkpoint and losing all the time, which didn't bother me too much because at least it's constantly interfacing with Exdeath, and there's no bait and switch like in 4 or 3. It's just Exdeath. Exdeath is the bad guy, even though there is Neo Exdeath, but Neo Exdeath is Exdeath accomplishing his goal of like like mixing with the void and becoming stronger, right? Like it's still Exdeath, it's just Exdeath but like ascended. It's very much like a one-track story that doesn't it does go like into a couple of different directions, but it keeps its core elements. Like the void is returned in this game, like it's called the Shadow of Darkness or the Cloud of Darkness in FF3, but it's just called the Void in this game, and it's spoken about pretty much from the beginning of the game of Enuo, like an old wizard who summoned it and doomed the world 1,000 years ago because you can't destroy the Void. Yeah, I really liked how one track this story was. Exdeath is such a dumb name for a villain, and I hate the name so bad, but I really am in tune with his motivation, which is, well, initially it is he's trying to actually reunite the worlds because the worlds have split and he wants to reunite them, which is actually kind of interesting. Whenever we found out that Galuf is from a different world, I thought it was going to be like 4, where he's from like the moon or some shit, or not the moon, but maybe from a parallel dimension or from like a different planet or something like that. I mean, they ride around on meteors, so I thought that was pretty normal. Also, sidetrack, they never explained the meteorite transit. And it wouldn't bother me too much if he wasn't like, oh yeah, there's no meteorites left, and this meteorite is the only one with power. There's so many issues with the meteorites. Like, all the warriors arrive to our world when Exdeath is like escaping on meteorites, and there's even one left that Kryl, a young child, drives to our planet, but somehow I guess they never expected to go home because none of the meteorites have power, or at least there's only power except for all of the warriors meteorites do not, they have like 1/4 a battery of power, but somehow Kryl's has enough to get back. It didn't make any sense to me. I don't know. How the fuck do you drive a meteorite? There was nothing inside of these meteorites that seemed like, or meteors, that seemed like there was any. It's going to be meteorite magic. I already can hear the comments about this pedantic take, but I'm sorry, it just was dumb. You can't, explain the meteorites, please, or don't like just be like, oh, we arrived here by magic. They're magic. I don't know, man. I thought the meteorites would have been so impactful, especially because at the beginning of the game, that's how you're introduced to Galuf, and it's just like, so you think these meteorites would have some more intricate thought because it's like pivotal to the story. It's not even just like a random thing. It's like the fact that meteorites fell in the first place is like a huge point of like, what are these all about? I did think that was kind of silly and dumb that they didn't dive into that at all about how the meteorites work, but this has probably been like half the video so far, so I'm gonna move on. But I did really enjoy the idea that it's kind of like 3, where the core idea, the core motivation between Exdeath is he's trying to reunite the world to the way it used to be. That's kind of something that the Cloud of Darkness mentioned in 3, but Exdeath actually wants it because these worlds actually were torn asunder, and in some kind of way he's bringing them back together. I'm not going to bring up the comparisons to Final Fantasy XIV. I'm not going to bring up the comparisons to Final Fantasy XIV. I'm not going to bring up the comparisons to Final Fantasy XIV. And then I also thought it was really cool how when he turns into Neo Exdeath, that he's sitting there like, oh yeah, no, now I want to just destroy the world because I hate my own existence. This is a monstrosity, and I want this to end and everything to end. I thought that was fine. Normally, whenever I hear about like a big cosmic entity just wanting everything to end, it's just like, oh yeah, well, it used to be dark and now there's just like a light here and it's annoying me, and I don't like that. Like, that's stupid. Like, I'm pretty sure that's what the Void in Runeterra is, as well as like the WoW's like lore is that it used to be dark and then like a spark of life started, and then he wants to destroy it because it's like blinding him or something, like the big dark dude. I don't play WoW, but I don't know. I watch Asmongold. That's all I got. It's kind of chill. I don't mind that too much. How it's been kind of reiterated a little bit here in Final Fantasy V of like, oh, I hate my own existence, and the only way to delete myself is to delete everything because I'm kind of eternal. So that was kind of sick. That's kind of the story. I mean, I didn't introduce the characters at all. I thought it was really cool that we kind of revolve around Galuf, who's an older dude. Like he's like fucking 70 or 60s. He's pretty old. And I thought that was sick because normally these stories always focus on and either kids or young adults. And I thought it was really cool to see like an older character kind of have like a very important elements into the story, because they're normally kind of cast off. You'll see in 6 that like Shabo, I can't remember his name, but the old wizard, he's just kind of like, oh, I'm a grandpa. Galuf being actually like the originator of where like Exdeath comes from. Well, not the originator, but he's like an initial fighter against Exdeath. I thought that was really cool, and him being how they get back to the new world, I really liked it. Then you also have Bartz, who's kind of just a free spirit. He's not really an interesting character. And then you have Lena and Faris, who have this kind of interesting dynamic. Faris being, you know, the standard and required the orphan in the game, though she's not an orphan. She kind of was just like lost at sea. But, well, I guess now they are both over. It's because Dad's fucking dead. But Ferris and Lena kind of go on this cool little story about how they are sisters, even though, you know, Ferris is a pirate and she like really cares about her crew, which is kind of a cool dynamic. And Lena, who's like trying to aspire to find her family and then also become queen and get that gumption in her. Final Fantasy V also has a lot of cutscenes. I noticed there's multiple times where I'm stopped from like playing, because it just turns into a cutscene. And that really threw me off, because I didn't think that would be happening in one of these pixel games. I know that 4 had some decent amount of cutscenes, but these were like a ton of mini cutscenes that just appeared everywhere. And it didn't bother me, it just definitely surprised me, because I didn't expect it. I kind of enjoyed it because it allowed me to see these characters interact with each other a bit more, and I don't mind that. So yeah, that's it for the story. I do want to talk about gameplay. I have a couple of thoughts on the gameplay. One, they refined and made the job system significantly better. You can now kind of have 2 jobs. You have one job that you're leveling, as well as you have a skill slot where you can take a skill from jobs that you've already leveled, which feels really nice, because now whenever you've leveled up a job and you're trying to look at these new jobs, you unlock new jobs every time that you get to a new crystal. Now whenever you get a new job that looks interesting, you can still use the strength of the class that you just got to, that you were just leveling up. If you just were leveling up like Dragoon, I don't know, White Mage, if you're just leveling up White Mage, you can still use a lot of like White Mage skills up to level 6 or something like that. So you still have White Mages on your team, and then you can be leveling up Ninja or Knight or Rune Knight, I think it was. Rune Knight was a really cool class as well, because it kind of changed the archetype of physical damage dealers, because now they can accentuate their damage, or they can multiply their damage by like elemental damage, even though it wasn't intuitive to me when I actually played the game. But it's like, say an enemy has a weakness that's fire, and you use the fire like rune for your weapon, you don't deal fire damage, you just deal physical damage with the fire weakness multiplier, which is kind of interesting. And I don't know exactly why that matters. If like they're immune to magic, maybe you can still hit them with a fire attack. So I don't know. I did think it was kind of a cool way to make physical attackers able to benefit from like enemies' weaknesses. So I really enjoyed the Rune Knight. The new job system also is really cool, because something I've constantly complained about is that you can only have 1 White Mage in your team. I really liked 2, because you could kind of have a secondary healer, because you could level up Cure. And in this game, it's the exact same. Like, everyone could be secondary class White Mage, and then like whatever their actual class is, which is kind of cool, and makes it so that it's a lot less frustrating when you're trying to level, or when you're trying to just like grind or go into like long dungeons, because you're not like, if something happens to your White Mage, you're not like running to get out of this fight. You can actually sit there and fight, and you can actually have someone else try and res. It was cool because Cecil did that in Final Fantasy IV, where you had Rosa and Cecil. That was very nice, and Cecil also doubled as a damage dealer and a kind of tank guy. So Cecil was like really cool, and it's nice that they thought about bringing that into this game. That also brings me directly into like my favorite point about this game. This is the first game where I felt compelled to like grind hard. And so it was because someone came into my stream and like pissed me off, because there was like, people don't grind these days. People are too scared to actually like sit down and play a game for long. No, man, I'm trying to play all the games. So I don't want to sit here and play the game for 10 years. I got really mad when someone said that. I sat down in one night and I grinded every job for every character up to max level. And in this game, there's this thing called, well, okay, it was in 3. They did have an Onion Knight, or what's called Freelancer. But in this game, the way it works is Freelancer gets all the stats of every job that you have maxed out, that you have like mastered, I think is what it's called. So if you master every class, Freelancer is freaking nutty. It also can use any weapon, and I think any ability. And it's also one of the only 2 classes that can use Ribbon in this game. Now, that's very important, because Final Fantasy V's final boss is dumb as fuck, in that Exdeath uses a move called White Hole. But it's really more about what jobs you use. Wait, what the fuck? Can I raise them? They're dead and stone. White Hole's stupid. I hate it, and it should not exist. What it does, it targets a single person on your team, and it simultaneously kills them and turns them to stone. That sucks, because even if you res someone, they're still stone. So you have to use 2 turns or 2 player actions in order to res that person and make them usable again. I had several times where I was in combat before I decided to do this grinding session, where 3 people on my team would almost instantly, all 3 of them would be hit with white hole. And by the time I was able to get 1 person up, the person I just got up and my white mage would be turned into stone and dead. So like I was like, what this move's dumb. It almost requires you to have ribbons on your team, so someone has to play as a freelancer. I take it. I don't know how else you would get through this move. Maybe someone in the comments can let me know, but I mean, I know some of you guys are like really good at these games. I don't do a ton of research. I try to just play from beginning to end, and I don't know, I also have a habit of just like beating my head against the wall when I play games like this. I found that very frustrating, but then also it really pushed me to engage with what I would consider end game mechanics, leveling every job max level. There's also Mimic, which was kind of interesting. I think I had Kryl as a Mimic at the end of the game, with everyone else being freelancers. I'm just not a fan of moves or bosses that the way that they limit test you is not by if you're high enough level, if you have enough stats, but if you are like, if you hold an item. Like a move like White Hole, if you're holding a ribbon, if you don't know what a ribbon does, is it makes you immune to status effects. And so you might be able to insta-death, but it doesn't turn you to stone. I'm not quite sure on that point, but it does not turn you to stone. If you do get downed, you just res them and they're fine again. Making the White Hole move completely useless. I just really don't enjoy the idea that you either have it or you don't. If you don't have it, this fight is impossible. And if you do have it, the move doesn't do anything. That just seems stupid to me. It's not skill check, it's knowledge check. And it's not even like knowledge check of do you know how to do it. It's a knowledge check of just, did you flip a switch? Oh, if you flip a switch, you win. If you don't flip a switch, you lose. Not fun. Hi, this is Editor Muffin. Yes, I know, in fact, that there is like a chemist class or job, and that it allows you to make like a remedy that makes it so you don't turn to stone, but you still die if you have that. And then once you die, you lose the buff of like the chemist class mix thing. So even if you use the chemist, it's still like it requires 2 player actions to get someone up, because you have to do, it just moves one of the player actions to before they got the move used on them. And then you constantly would have to be casting on everyone this freaking one thing, and it requires resources. So it's dumb. I don't like the chemist class. I don't like this move. It's stupid. Anyways, I'm going to get moved past the point, because I really enjoyed grinding and getting these classes up to max, and having a class that was kind of, fuck you, I'm God. Like sometimes it's cool to fight a boss that's like, I'm God, but it's cool to like feel that way yourself. I really like big number. I really like, oh, I'm small little dude, but I'm able to kill, deities and stuff. And this probably is the most powerful I've felt in a long time. If I remember correctly, and I might go get the clip, I beat the final boss on auto battle. Like I just sat in auto battle, and I sat back. I sat back. I think it took me 2 tries. I beat X Death without my hands on the keyboard. Some purists might not like that, but that's what makes me feel really good about a game, is feeling just like so strong and feeling like I earned it. It didn't just come to me, right? I spent the time. I sat down. Now, sure, I had the 4 times XP on. Sue me, right? But I sat down for like 12 hours straight to get up to level like 80 for everyone, and I was able to auto battle the final boss, and it felt amazing. The last note that I wanted to mention about Final Fantasy V is they actually made dungeons kind of cool. Not like insanely like revolutionary, but there were like a couple of puzzles that you had to solve where you would like flip switches on and off, and it would like open up doors and things, as well as like if you take the desert, for example, there was several parts where like it felt very Pokemon-esque, but this probably was before Pokemon. I think Pokemon was what, the mid-90s, 95 or something like that, where you stand on a path and it just like drags you around. So you have to figure out what the actual like points you have to get on, so it like drags you to the correct point. I really enjoyed dungeons. They were not frustrating at all in this game compared to like Final Fantasy II, where the dungeons were so bad. They were so bad. But yeah, no, I actually really enjoyed Final Fantasy V. It's probably so far the best Final Fantasy I've played. I have this tentative tier list that I've been using, despite the fact that it was goofy as hell. I can show you where it's at right now. yeah, I've got it in solid A. I really enjoyed 2, and I really enjoyed 5. 3 and 4, they're in. I got to figure out what theirs are going. I'm going to replay them. But this is kind of where it's sitting for me right now. It's the best one I've played. I really enjoy it. But it's also not like the best Final Fantasy ever. And those might move. I'm going to do a video at the end where I talk about every Final Fantasy. But that's kind of where I feel about Final Fantasy V right now. I do really appreciate you guys sitting here and coming into the streams and talking with me about the games. It's been a lot of fun. If you want to come in, I stream down here at Twitch. But then also I'm going to start streaming Final Fantasy VII Remake soon and 7 Remake Rebirth. So those are going to be live here on YouTube as well. So be sure to subscribe, check out them when those go live, and feel free to come in and talk. And I love talking about Final Fantasy. So I appreciate you guys so much. As always, I've been Muffin. You guys have been amazing. I'll see y'all next time. Peace.